LeBron James has broken the NBA's all-time scoring record. What does it mean for him? What does it mean for the NBA? What does it mean for NBA history? It's a LeBron James scoring roundtable next.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey everyone, I'm Brian Kamenetzky, host of Locked On Lakers. Joining me to discuss this genuinely monumental moment in NBA history, Wes Goldberg, host of Locked On Heat, Chris Manning, Locked On Cavs. I think there's a theme, guys. Places LeBron has played and scored some of these 36,000 and change or whatever it is points that he's got now. When you saw this happen, we've had a lot of lead up time. Wes, I'll ask you first. What do you think this means, just sort of in the context of NBA history, to have LeBron pass Kareem like this?
I mean, it's huge, right? This gives him the ultimate numbers argument. If we want to just launch right into the LeBron versus Michael Jordan debate, he's the number one scorer of all time. He's already kind of had the more NBA Finals appearances, more consecutive Finals appearances, all these things, but he was never going to match MJ in terms of just 6-0 in the finals, right? He was never going to get that. But he was always going to have more points, more rebounds, more assists. But now he's number one, right? Now he's the number one scorer in NBA history. And that's really sort of a banner type of thing. What we're talking about here, this is what, first paragraph of the Hall of Fame enshrinement piece for him? Of all the accomplishments LeBron has had, and as important as he is to the teams he's played on and the NBA and the history of this league, the number one scorer in NBA history, that's in the first couple of sentences when we're talking about LeBron when it's all said and done.
I tend to agree with that kind of exactly, and I think it plays into his longevity, and I think that is one of the best cases he can make for himself as the greatest player of all time, is that he's been doing this at an absurdly high level through different eras, through different versions of the NBA, and he himself has adapted to all these different versions. How many different versions of LeBron the scorer have we seen? We've seen first Cleveland era where he's hyper athletic and just dunking on everybody. We have the Miami era where he becomes just this different kind of monster. The second Cleveland era where it is, iso ball with Kyrie and some of the stuff he did that last season. And then the Lakers thing is its own thing as well. He adds, the pull-up three to his game in a different way, right? Every era he's kind of adapted to and added more to his legacy. And it also, we should note, it doesn't seem like he's gonna just pass this record and then fade off. He's gonna add and add and add to this. This is gonna be a record that I don't know how anyone is ever gonna get close to this, right? It's very hard to envision what it would take for anyone to ever get close to this record.
I think, Wes, your point too about the what this is, for all the things LeBron has been, for all the things LeBron has done. When you talk about Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, he is the NBA's all-time leading scorer, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And, to the place where we forget, if you want to go high school, college, pros, all that, Kareem, there has never been a more successful basketball player than Kareem. That is the thing that people center on. And, and Chris, to your point about longevity, I do think it's important to note, he's averaged 27 points a year. This isn't one of those, Fred McGriff type things where he just accumulates stats and gets in the Hall of Fame, a chunk at a time. These are prolific numbers year after year after year after year. And
he's number 5 on the all-time scoring list by points per game, right?
Yeah.
On average. He's behind Michael Jordan, Wilt Chamberlain, Elgin Baylor, and Kevin Durant, and he's only 1/14th of a point behind Elgin Baylor. So even just if you go by points per game, he's basically a top 3 scorer of all time. And so, yeah, I know people want to dismiss this just because he's been in the league for 20 years and he's 38 years old and Michael Jordan had to play at North Carolina. What would have happened then? It's I don't really care. This guy is awesome. None of that stuff really matters.
Well, and to me, I mean, and I want to talk a little bit more about the scoring part of this, and maybe we'll save this for later. But he last week passed Mark Jackson and Steve Nash to be 4th in assists.
Right.
And it's one thing to be 4th in assists and and maybe another thing to be the NBA's all-time leading scorer. To be both of those things is genuinely stunning and worth some conversation. But so we'll save that. But Wes, to your point, Why do you think he's not considered a scorer? Like, it's not just volume, it's not just the accumulation of points. On a points per game basis, as you point out,
Yeah.
he is among the greatest the game has ever seen. And he rarely is referred to as a scoring player.
Yeah, I think it just comes down to first impressions, like so many things in the world does. And it's kind of remarkable to think that LeBron's first impression came 20 years ago when he first got into the NBA for a lot of people when he was first drafted by the Cavs. But, there's a lot of ridicule back then about how he would pass instead of taking potential game-winning shots, despite being double or triple coverage sometimes. He actually just made the right basketball play. And by the way, that's not even a conversation now. Now, like young players that do that are like lauded and be like, wow, what a smart IQ player, ahead of his time, like whatever. They're not ahead of their time. They're just copying what LeBron did when he first got drafted to the NBA. But I do think that those first impressions are what sticks in people's minds. People will say, well, no, a scorer, like they would say, Michael Jordan would have taken that shot. Michael Jordan's considered a scorer. Kobe Bryant would have taken that shot. Kobe Bryant is considered a scorer to so many people. LeBron didn't take those shots. And I think that's kind of the stuff that lingers in a lot of people's minds, despite so many things that have happened since then, including maybe having the scoring record or having the scoring record now. Despite all those things, I think that stuff just people have a hard time shaking first impressions.
I think this goes back to his first Cleveland tenure. There's a play that is etched in my mind of, I think they're playing in Toronto, and there was a debate in Cleveland for maybe a week, and probably on, whatever talk show existed at that time, whatever Skip Bayless was on yelling about LeBron at that time. And he passed to Daniel Marshall in the corner instead of going for the layup. And he's like, I made the right pass. I made the right basketball play. And you read any book about LeBron James, you read anything his coaches have ever said about him, they define him in that way. And that's like the opposite of Kobe, is what I think Wes correctly pointed out. Like, that is the opposite of how many other players that we've seen come through the league. He is, I think, as much as he is now the scoring leader, he has never defined himself in that way, when almost every other great player has defined themselves in that way. It's like almost he is that, but he's not asking to be put in that prism first. He's asking to be put in all these other prisms before we think of him as a scorer. And I think that bugs people for some reason, honestly. It seems like it annoys people that he's not this like alpha scoring guy, but he's never been that. And he's never really wanted to be that, even though I'm sure if he wanted to, he could do it.
But he's not. He's not the alpha scoring guy. He's averaging 27 points a game.
Right,
for 20
right. But it's
years.
but if he was like the alpha scoring guy and like wanted to play like James Harden in Houston, or wanted to play like Luka does in Dallas, or wanted to play like Kobe or like Michael, you could have seen him do something totally like beat this in a different way. And yet he didn't. Like, I think there's a more extreme scoring version of LeBron that we never saw because he didn't want to play that way.
Eric Spoelstra used to say all the time, and when he was in Miami, like he could average 40 a game. It wouldn't be hard for him. And I always, especially that LeBron that was shooting 60% from the field and stuff, like he could, right? And right now he's 7th in the NBA in scoring right now. He's actually on track right now. He's averaging 30 a game. If he finishes this year averaging 30 a game, this will be the first time in LeBron's career that he's averaged 30 a game in consecutive seasons. And this guy's the all-time scoring leader. Like, it's pretty remarkable, all those things. Also, to the point, just the original question, Brian, like, why is he not? He also said that he's not a scorer. Like, LeBron just also said it, and that's a pretty famous quote. So maybe that's also part of it. But maybe I think it's almost not labeling LeBron a scorer could actually be considered a compliment, I think, because like you also said, he's 4th right now in assists. Who knows where he's going to be by the time he retires? Instead of just labeling him maybe the greatest scorer of all time, maybe we go one step further and just say, is he the greatest offensive player of all time? And I think a lot of people would have an issue with that. But if he ends up being number 1 in points and assists, like those are like the most important things on offense are shooting and passing, I think. So
let's talk about that, because
not screen assists. Sorry, David Locke, but
well, but let's talk about that, because and we can get into this next. Like, we're talking like that. I think that is intentional. I think because saying I am a scorer, like Carmelo Anthony is called by a lot of people one of the most transcendent scorers of the modern era and all that kind of stuff. He has had seasons where he averaged more than LeBron's career average. I just looked it up 4 times. One of those was by 0.2 of a point. So here's a guy who, in his heyday was a 25, 26, 27 point a night guy. He's still not, doing what LeBron's done over 20 years. So when LeBron says, I'm not a scorer, and you talk about West, like, is he the greatest basketball player, the greatest offensive player? I think those two things are related in terms of how he wants us to think of him. So let's talk about that next.
Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. As a small business owner or hiring manager, you know that success in 2023 all depends on the team members you surround yourself with. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. With LinkedIn Jobs, you can hire qualified candidates more efficiently by matching open roles with people who have the skills, values, and experiences to help you achieve your goals. LinkedIn Jobs helps you quickly attract qualified candidates to your open jobs with targeting tools. They go beyond resume data by using insights from your job post, company, and their 875 million member profiles to put your post in front of the most qualified candidates. Identify the most qualified candidates on LinkedIn Jobs and connect with them fast and for free. LinkedIn Jobs makes it easy to screen and rate applicants based on your job qualifications, all on one platform. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates that you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnba to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply.
So, Chris, before we get to this question that we had set up there, like, what do you consider to be like the most important part, like the most impressive part of like the way he's put together this scoring record?
I think it honestly to me is the longevity, which is sort of the boring answer. But this is almost
thanks for
2
playing.
decades.
Wes, what do you think about? I'm kidding. Go ahead.
No, but just think about the era we are in, the eras he has straddled, the kinds of players that were in the league when he came in 2003. Think about how different the world was in 2003 when this guy enters the NBA. Basketball was a different sport. And he's here 20 years later. He's outlasted guys who were drafted after him. He's just continually just been here. He's just kind of there, and he doesn't go away. There is nothing to me maybe more impressive about LeBron in the fact that he is just persisted and just been around and never is out of this conversation. The fact that he is at his age and playing at the level that he is and scoring the way he is, we maybe don't talk about it enough in terms of how good he's been at that and just how long he's being around. There are players that he was drafted with who are out of the league. Dwayne Wade, think about that. Leaves the league because his knees. Oh. Yeah, sorry. This is just me pandering to Wes. His knees are like they don't work in the same way anymore. He can't continue to play it that way. Chris Bosh has been in the league for a long time. Like he's gonna play longer than Chris Paul, who came in after him. Like this guy is just continually there playing at this high level, and I really can't think of anyone who maybe is going to match that. This is unmatched the way he has played at this high level for as long as he has.
Yeah, and Wes, I mean, like to that point, Andy and I, my brother Andy, co-host of the show, like the first part of the season, LeBron was a little off. He had been sick. It just wasn't, and he wasn't bad, but by LeBron standards, he was down around, he was under 50%, and he was down around 25 points a game. It just didn't look quite the same, and we were like, like what's going on? And then like you look up like 2 weeks later, nope, no, he's fine. He's fine. Like when you saw those Heat days, did you think like we'd be here? Yeah, he'd be playing for a little while. He went to Cleveland, he'd go somewhere else, whatever. But do you think he'd be this guy this many years following his time in Miami?
No. Like, who thinks that? Like, who ever thinks that? You've heard, like, former players in, like, the quote-unquote new media be like, yeah, I always knew. Like, you didn't know anything. How could you have known LeBron was going to do this? This is crazy. We've never seen anything like this before. No, I had no idea this was going to happen. But also, that's kind of the point, too. Like, you could see Chris Paul this year. You're like, yeah, this is probably winding down here. Carmelo, the last few years, you're like, this is Oklahoma City. Like, that. Like, this is starting to wind down. With LeBron, it just never feels like it's winding down. Like it just doesn't ever feel that way. So you don't even think about what it looks like at the end of his career. The only reason we're talking about the LeBron's status and where it's going to be in the end of his career right now is because Kareem Abdul-Jabbar didn't score 200 more points or whatever it was. Like that's the only reason we're talking about it now. Otherwise, there's no point in even having this conversation. And like it's just it's wild to me. Can I give you guys one more stat that I just looked up?
Yeah.
So I know that people want to use the longevity argument too, but I think that there's a really great argument too when we're talking about LeBron's peak and just how long the peak lasted. He scored 70% of these points between his third season in Cleveland to his last year, the second time in Cleveland. So obviously the Miami 4 years in between that. That's a 13 season peak where he scored 70% of all these points. Now I know that like 13 years is
Did
a
you
lot,
just say a
but
13 season peak?
he has a 13 season peak.
That's absurd.
It's absurd. It's wild because Michael Jordan had like what? He had two different peaks, but I would argue that probably the second three-peat is probably really the Michael Jordan peak. But if you want to argue that he had two peaks, fine. Even if you take Michael Jordan's two peaks, that was 6 years. Like LeBron's is more than double Michael Jordan's peak.
That's
Just
bonkers.
want to throw that out there, right?
Yes,
Bonkers.
but like
I could
just
do
the
stats, too.
notion of having a 13-year peak is insane. But before we get to the some of the stuff about like kind of looking forward to our memories of LeBron and all that, I do want to get back to this question that we were talking about before about how LeBron wants us to think of him and why it seems more natural that he'd become the NBA's all-time assist leader than the NBA's all-time leading scorer. And you guys saw this and stuff at a time, pre-pandemic when, maybe it was a little more, I don't know, however you want to phrase it, but like he is very careful about the way, it is very important, I think, to LeBron, how people look at him as a basketball player and the intentionality behind how he wants us to see him and view him has been there, to me at least, from the beginning. How much do you think he's been really working to actively, I don't know, shape what we think, and also, but at the same time, shape what he thinks is the right way to do it in some ways in opposition to the way we think about Michael Jordan. And, LeBron called himself, he thinks he's the best player ever. And that means he thinks he's better than Jordan, which means you got to show people definitionally why I'm better. And it's not just scoring and it's not just rings.
Yeah. I think we're seeing it like pretty clearly with all these sit-down interviews that he's been doing, like with ESPN and stuff like that. He really wants to get in front of a camera and discuss this, and not necessarily. It doesn't feel like he's trying to be in control of the message the way that he has in the past in terms of his free agency decisions and stuff like that. He is kind of letting the media machine do its thing in regards to putting him at the top of this list over the last few weeks, which obviously you would want that to happen and kind of put it all in historical context, which is what the media really is best at. But in terms of just how he's wants to be talked about, it's not just the basketball player, it's also the person and everything like that. He's very intentional with what kind of advertisements he takes and all these kinds of things. And that's why it goes back again to your point, Brian, like a scorer is just sort of a scorer, right? Like we kind of don't even, it's weird. Points are the most important thing in the NBA, but we kind of just sort of like look at us smart media folks and analysts and stuff kind of look past the points per game, and we're like, yeah, but how good are you at like switch coverage and playing zone and like
and
whatever
screen assists
and screen assists? Like we almost overanalyze the game to a point, and I think LeBron's pushing back against that too in a way where it's like, I'm not just I could be your points god, but I can also be awesome at all these other things. I'm also beyond just scoring the basketball. I'm fourth in assists of all time. I'm out here like leading businesses, the charity work, like all the stuff that he tries to put out there. The LeBron brand tries to put forth out there. He barely even talks about the scoring, but I think we're at the point now where he doesn't even have to talk about it because he's number one. Like he doesn't need to talk about it, but all that other stuff you kind of have to talk about.
Chris, I don't know, like he's fought against a certain kind of goatness for his entire career, and it's the Michael Jordan the way that we've sort of created the mythology around Jordan, and it's the scoring. And Jordan was great at a lot of stuff, but it's the scoring and the titles. And LeBron's had to fight against that, the preordained idea that Jordan is the greatest player of all time. End of discussion. Everybody else is going to be second, because I think this is where he's seen himself going, since he was a kid in Akron.
I think that's right. And I think that's why you see some, like, I thought the Cam Thomas quotes I don't know if you guys saw these quotes from the other night, where he was him and LeBron are the youngest players ever to hit 40 or more in consecutive games. And he's like, I'm a Kobe guy. It would have been more to me if it's Kobe. And I'm very sure LeBron is aware of the fact that there is a sect of basketball fans, a sect of basketball media, a sect of Laker fans. I am absolutely sure of, Brian. You could probably speak to that better than any of us.
almost all of them. I mean,
Yeah, almost all of them that are like,
it's not a sect. It's pretty much the entire cult.
Well, yeah. The cult, okay, you said cult, not me. Just to be clear, you can go to Brian for that. But like, he has pushed away from like that definition of himself, and it's been that way since the beginning. And he can make this argument for a score. I think, as Wes put it correctly, it's like he has the most points. He did it. Like, you can't refute him. And it's why he sometimes, when he talks about, like, when people say, oh, he doesn't have a bag, or he's got, like, I thought some of the piece he did with Zach Lowe, where he kind of talked through some of his performances, and you've seen him talk recently about, like, his unstoppable shots in certain ways. It's like, these are intentional comments from LeBron, who is maybe the last superstar to really use the media in this way as a tool to talk about himself in that way. Guys don't like go to beat reporters or go to media outlets and do these things in the same way anymore. Like, there's not like the next generation doesn't do this. LeBron, I think, understands the power of that in a way that is very, very smart, but it also allows him to talk about the stuff on his terms. And he's dictated the terms of this for his whole career, just in the same way he dictates everything on the court. He's dictating the conversation about how he scores, and he's making a point to be like, I do have a bag. I can do things on the court like that you think I maybe can't do. And he's right, but I think he's making it a conversation of late, and I think that's kind of interesting.
Let's talk memories and let's talk legacy. Although Wes did note, we're like maybe 2 or 3 years away from really evaluating the full LeBron legacy, because it doesn't seem to be going anywhere. But we'll get to all that stuff next.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. This year, the only app you need at your Super Bowl party is FanDuel. That's America's #1 sportsbook. We're really excited about our new sports betting partner for Locked On, because they're the #1 sportsbook in America, FanDuel. And if you're new to FanDuel, that's even better. They have so many great features that make betting on sports fun and easy. Download FanDuel now so you can bet on Super Bowl 57 with a no-sweat first bet. You'll get up to $3,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. FanDuel lets you bet on anything from the money line to point spread to who will score a touchdown. Right now, they have Travis Kelce as the most likely player to score a touchdown in the Super Bowl. Eagles, I believe, are 1.5 favorites. Like, they have everything you could want for the Super Bowl, and they have everything you could want in sports overall. I know I'm coordinating bets with my friends for Super Bowl Sunday. You can bet on NBA stuff every night. They have the no-sweat parlays for TNT games. The FanDuel Sportsbook app is safe, secure, and super easy to use. So join FanDuel today at FanDuel.com/lockedon to claim your no-sweat first bet in Super Bowl 57. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
We'll finish on the whole, is LeBron actually the greatest player of all time thing. But I've seen him with the Lakers, you guys, the Cavs and the Heat. When people think of LeBron, what franchise do you think he will most closely be associated with?
The Miami
Heat. I think that it's the Cleveland Cavaliers, and it's because of 2016. 2016 is the indelible LeBron James moment. Wes is just triggering me, and like, I respect that, but it's the Cavs because of 2016. I think the Heat stuff is a certain era of LeBron that is like incredibly important to his story, and maybe the apex of like just the utter dominant LeBron force. But there is nothing that he will ever do in basketball that I think beats 2016 Game 7. I think his iconic play is the chase down block. His iconic moment is Cleveland, this is for you, as he's crying, talking to on ABC, right? Like, that's the moment, I think.
You're not wrong, and it's unfortunate that the very best years of LeBron James are basically a footnote on his career. Like, we're going to poll people 50 years from now and be like, what teams did LeBron play for? And they're going to say the Cavaliers and the Lakers. And then you're going to be like, what was the other one? And they're going to be like, I have no idea. I think people are just like not going to remember that he played for the Miami Heat. It's going to be like a Jeopardy question, like 50 years from now. And it's going to stump a lot of people. I feel like maybe this is just my.
Wait, you really think people are just going to flat forget that the guy played for Miami?
People already have. Already have. Like, just like Chris was just like, yeah, it's just like, and he also played for Miami. Like, that's how people talk about LeBron's years in Miami, and he has never been better. That was his absolute peak. That 27-game win streak was in 2012, 2013. Like, it doesn't get better than that, LeBron James wise. He was the best in terms of athleticism, in terms of efficiency, in terms of the basketball IQ and stuff like that. There were years in Cleveland where he was close to it, but he was at the absolute apex from an athletic standpoint. In Miami, he joined all of those best things, And people are just going to be like, oh, yeah, like those 4 years in Miami. That was pretty cool. What happened there? And he's like, I don't know. He won his first championship. Does any of this matter?
It's the heel era, though.
I mean, at the risk
of the heel era.
But at the risk of undercutting what he's doing right now for the city and the show that I'm connected to, you're going to forget those things before you forget like what looked like could be a bunch of just horribly unsuccessful campaigns. Not his fault.
Well, that's why people remember the Lakers
years
more, is because of the drama. He's already played for the Lakers for more time than he's played for the Heat.
Oh my gosh!
I
hadn't even
also
thought about it that way.
And the fan base doesn't forget anything, by the way.
Also, I think the bubble title is like a kind of a weird moment where we all were needing something to watch, and like that hits differently. I think it's just kind of like there in a weird way, and whether it means more or means less or whatever, I think those debates are often quite stupid and silly. But like that was a moment where like everything was at the front and center, and he did that with the Lakers. Like that's a Lakers title. That's just gonna have an impression on that. And the way that the Heat stuff is like, that's his villain era. That's the most unlikable LeBron has probably ever been. I think that's fair to say.
Never understood it.
Well, okay, but I'm sorry. When you go like his one misstep that he's ever made was the Boys and Girls Club thing that Donovan Mitchell was at, and that whole thing was just like a weird. The only misstep he's ever really made, and like then the not one, not two. It's very fun in retrospect, but like that's the only time, and that feels like the only time that like most people that really didn't like LeBron. That feels like the one era.
And then he won, and then he kind of did and then the heel turn back to superhero part. Because after he beat I think the other part too is in Miami, what are the teams that he played in the finals, right? You think about it, it's Dallas. Nobody cares about Dallas. Oklahoma City. Nobody cares about Oklahoma City. And and the San Antonio Spurs, which we know nobody cares about, the San Antonio Spurs. But when he was in Cleveland that second time, he played the Warriors 4 times in a row. And that was like, those are big markets, big stars, huge ratings, the highest ratings the NBA has ever gotten. So to Chris's point, yeah, he's going to be remembered for that second stint in Cleveland more than anything else. And I don't think that there's even a debate there. He gets the homegrown title, the whole thing. The chase down block, the Kyrie shot, which is, he's right there for, obviously. All of these things coming back from 3-1 in dramatic fashion. That's going to be it. But I think that it's not just like the Heat part and just that he played there for 4 years and the heel turn and everything. It's also that I don't think people were that invested in those, well, because they weren't. They didn't have the ratings that those championships in Cleveland did, or those finals runs, I should say.
All right, so last question for you guys. LeBron has said he believes he is LeBron the greatest basketball player of all time?
Go ahead, Chris. I'll let you lay the foundation here.
For me, I think he is. I ultimately, I think I'm going to take a slight coward's way out on this and say that I think this is something of a generational thing. Like for me, I grew up in Cleveland. I was a kid when I was in 4th grade when he gets drafted, right? I went to school, my first day of 4th grade, me and all my friends and I, to be grammatically correct, wore LeBron jerseys. He is like the indubitable athlete of my childhood. And the things I saw him do, even though he doesn't win a title in that run, are like some of the most extraordinary things I've ever seen a basketball player do. Think about the shot he hits against the Magic in that series right before he leaves. Think about, the dunk on Duncan in the finals. Go look at the starting 5 of the team he took to the 2007 finals. That team had like no business being in the finals, but LeBron gets them there. And then you see what he comes back and does. And I think that in that, like, that era, that second era, the 2018-19 season is just like, I can't imagine many players are capable of what he did that season. The year before that, that's the best team of that era, and they don't win because they run into the KD Warriors. That was an absolute buzzsaw. Obviously, 2016, and just everything that he has accomplished to me, he is my GOAT because it is partially an era thing, but I think the resume is just unflappable. There's no hole in this resume at this point.
LeBron James, kid from Akron, Chris Manning, kid from Cleveland. Basically the same thing. Wes, what do you think?
I think it's too early to have this conversation because he's still going. He's 30 years old. And if he demands a trade this year and goes to a team and wins 2 straight titles, boom, that's 6 rings.
But the implication there is that he's not. Like I will answer. I think he already is. I think he could leave tomorrow. I think he left yesterday. Like, and he is. He's the greatest basketball player of all time. Your answer implies that there's still work to be done.
Yeah, what else could he accomplish, Wes, that would change this for you? This like aside from is there anything besides like another title that really adds to this to you?
No, no, it doesn't. But that's it's not my whole. To me, LeBron. To me, I guess you're asking me, he is the greatest basketball player of all time. But I will hear an argument also. This is sort of the point I always make. If LeBron came around and did all this stuff in the '90s, and then Michael Jordan came around and went 6-0 in the finals, what kind of and did all the things that he did between 2003 and 2023? What's that conversation look like? Are we just now anointing Michael Jordan as the greatest because of the dominance that he just had? So I don't know the answer to that. It is sort of just a generational thing, and it depends on how old you are.
It's a value judgment for what you like and don't like. Because as Chris pointed out, like LeBron gets dinged for losing his first finals. That team had no business going to finals. What the hell they were even doing there? Like,
and Michael Jordan fell on his face against the Pistons and didn't even make it to the finals. And so like it does determine, and that's why I say it's a numbers game. LeBron has it. Like, he's got the numbers. There's not a numbers argument other than 0 losses in the finals that you could bring to dismiss LeBron's case here. So I do think he's my greatest player ever. But if somebody wants to tell me that Michael Jordan is the greatest player that they've ever seen, that's fine. Like, I'm not gonna just. I guess that's a boring non-bar argument to have, but to me, he is the greatest, and I would like to see him actually go on and win 2 more championships, just to be like, you know what, I have 6 too, just to see what happens. But
it'd be tremendous for our traffic, so I'm really behind that idea.
Well, it's probably not going to be on the Lakers, by the way. It's going to be on.
It would honestly, like, if he should decide the extension, and like the Cavs may have ultimately been like his best chance to pivot and like go get another title again, if we're being honest about it.
Chris, should they just build the statue now for LeBron outside of the arena?
Which era? Which is it? What you is
get
two statues?
Two statues. I think you do the shot, some version of the. Well, here's the thing: none of these statues ever look good.
Right,
is the thing. Like the Dirk one, I'm sorry.
Under the first statue, is there just a bunch of burning LeBron jerseys at his feet?
No,
he's like walking away from the arena.
No, that would be tough thing. The thing is, someone in Cleveland would be like, we should make like a Nick Chubb statue instead of like the 2 LeBron statues. And I'd be like, you're wrong. Like, you're unfortunately wrong. But I think it's the shot against the Magic, and then I think it's the chase down block. I think those are the 2. But that leads me to ask you guys. I think the chase down block like is the moment. I think there are some other ones you could point to as well, like the Miami. There's some stuff in Miami I think Wes could shout out. Do you have like a favorite random LeBron moment or game that kind of stuck out to you when you're thinking about him? Because I've had a couple pop into my head this week that I've gone back and like looked up on YouTube and been really just like, dang, this guy, man, this freaking guy.
Game 6 against the Celtics in the playoffs, the look, the whole thing. That's the one that to me is the LeBron game. That is the LeBron game in my opinion. The other one, when he was also playing for Miami, when he had the game winner against the Warriors, that whole, at the buzzer, that was one of the ones. That's actually, I think I heard in a recent LeBron interview, he thinks it's one of his best shots of his career too. It feels kind of like the Orlando Magic shot, but it's a regular season game and not a playoff game. So those are the 2 that stick out to me.
This is, honestly, you guys mentioned most of the games. Like part of the problem with the Lakers era is it has not had as many of these as you would like. In the bubble era, it was so strange. But this is one of the things I think is impressive. It's like, it is just this long parade of stuff. And it just keeps, I think you're right, Chris. Nothing is better in terms of what he was doing than, those finals, with Cleveland. But it's just it is stunning the consistency with which you can pull these things out, and that you can pull them out starting 18 years ago and still pull them out now. Like, this does not happen. Anyway, it is a huge moment in NBA history, a huge moment obviously for LeBron. Wes Goldberg, host of Locked On Heat, Chris Manning, host of Locked On Cavs. Thanks for doing this. This is fun.
Good times, guys.
Do it next time somebody breaks the record.
Well, we'll do it when LeBron actually retires at age 42.
Well, he gets the assist record, guys.
The assist record, yeah.
All right. Thanks, everyone.